who supported this bill. Our incredible Senate President Leroy Garcia is with us, Senator Rhonda Fields, Representative Selena Gonzalez Gutierrez, and Representative Leslie Herod. Really, without their hard work and dedication, we wouldn't be where we are today. I also want to thank the Colorado Black Legislative Caucus, the Latinx Legislative Caucus. We have many others who are joining us here today. Speaker Becker, Majority Leader Garnett, Senator Tate, Colonel Packard, Sheriff Pelley, Director of Public Safety Stan Hilke, former sheriff, Elizabeth Epps, District Attorney Michael Doherty, many others who really came together around a really challenging issue that has eluded Colorado and eluded our nation for far too long. I am so proud to sign this bill today on the 155th anniversary of Juneteenth. This marks the day that news of freedom finally came to enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, the last enclave of the defeated Confederacy. But as we know, Juneteenth, though of course we celebrate today, and today we give meaning to that celebration by signing an important bill, did not mark the end of racism in our country, nor did it even begin to end the racial inequities that really plague so many aspects of American society. It took another century of protest and collective action to even end state-sanctioned segregation and bring about key civil rights and voting rights legislation in the 1960s. And the struggle for equality continues to this day and through this day. We've seen this struggle play out in a powerful fashion in the last few weeks in communities large and small across our state and country as millions of Americans have become part of our nation's largest civil rights demonstrations in half a century. This is a long overdue moment of national reflection. And as a 17-year-old black student named Ashira Campbell told me yesterday, it's not just a protest against police brutality, but a protest against a society that is too comfortable with injustice. It's up to those of us in government, our elected officials, to hear the undeniable, unassailable message of these demonstrations and the voices of those who deserve to be addressed. The vision that every American deserves the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, regardless of race. That black Americans specifically deserve to feel safe going for a run in our neighborhoods, walking to the convenience store, watching birds at the park, interacting with the police, or just being in their own homes. And that we cannot wait any longer to knock down institutional racism born out of America's original sin of slavery. Now, this legislation specifically contains landmark evidence-based reforms that not only protect civil rights, but will help restore trust between law enforcement and the communities that they serve. This bill that I'm about to sign bans chokeholds. It creates new standards for the use of force, including not using deadly force when a person is only suspected of a minor or nonviolent offense. It includes requiring all peace officers who interact with the public wear body cameras. Many do already, but this will make sure that going forward that will be phased in across all law enforcement activities in our state. Allowing individuals, really creating a new duty for police officers to intervene if they see a fellow officer engaging in an inappropriate use of force, instead of just standing by and watching. Requiring peace officers to have a legal basis for making contact with individuals, and after making that contact, reporting the perceived demographic data, and requiring new data reporting on the use of force. This is a meaningful, substantial reform bill. And of course, credit goes to the bill sponsors, who I acknowledged, to those working on these issues for many years, but also to the tens of thousands of Coloradans who have raised their voices to protest injustice. And it was inspiring to see Republicans and Democrats from very different walks of life not only vote for this legislation, but also give passionate speeches about the reason why these reforms are necessary. The unity of the vote in Colorado General Assembly in the House and Senate reflects the unity we see in our streets, old and young, white, brown, and black, gay and straight, men and women, Republicans, independents, and Democrats, taking a stand, echoing the righteous refrain that black lives matter. I was glad to see law enforcement officers link arm in arm with demonstrators demanding justice for George Floyd and others, and work in good faith with legislators on these important issues. We're going to need to continue to work with law enforcement to get this right and to make sure that there is transparency and accountability, because our peace officers do good and important work in our communities every single day. Those who run towards danger, never questioning for a moment their sworn duty to protect and serve. And we recognize and appreciate that work and the sacrifices that they make to serve our communities. You know, a childhood friend of mine from Boulder, now a peace officer named Vinny Montez, shared some thoughts the other day that were a reminder of the very tough challenges facing our society. Vinny was raised by hardworking parents that cleaned homes and businesses to provide opportunities for their families, and they really taught Vinny to be inclusive and creative and show love for everyone. And it was those values that led him to become an officer, and he served his community for the last 22 years. Vinny wrote, "For the first time in my professional career, I'm deeply hurt because I've concluded that too many Coloradans don't think much of the law enforcement profession." He also added that, "Do you have any idea how hard it is for the men and women serving in this profession today? Do you know what it's like to say, 'I'm sorry for your loss,' and not be able to get the sound of a family member's screams and pain out of your mind? Do you know what it's like to show up at an accident scene where there are dead people and people still alive that need help? Do you know what it's like to give CPR to a 17-year-old kid, to be covered in blood, do everything you can to save his life, but then have him die anyway? Do you know what it's like to have someone spit in your face, tell you that they hope that your family members die?" You know, good police work and common sense police reform go together. They are and they must happen simultaneously, and it's the only way we're going to restore the broken trust between law enforcement and our communities, and particularly our communities of color. We as a community need to recognize and appreciate the important work that officers do every day, and officers need to understand that the status quo is unsustainable and that reforms are desperately needed to achieve the goal of policing, and that's ensuring that everyone can be safe in our communities, no matter their race, no matter their background. Now, today is a significant step. It's the right direction, but let's not kid ourselves. No one is under the illusion that criminal justice issues exist in a vacuum. No one bill or policy change can possibly undo centuries of systemic and institutional racism. Police reform is a constructive part of a much larger puzzle, but we also need to look at the whole picture: educational equity, addressing disparities in health care and housing and employment, environmental justice, economic opportunity. Our systems reflect our values, and if we're really going to live up to the values upon which this nation was founded, we know that we need to change our systems, both from the bottom up and from the top down. And to continue this work, we need to make sure that we have the will to do so, even after the protests die down. Things cannot go back to normal. We need to create a new normal where everyone's rights are respected, where Black Americans feel safe going about their daily lives, and where Black lives matter. James Baldwin once wrote, quote, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced," end quote. By facing the cold, hard truth about the unequal treatment of Black Americans and communities of color, we can and we will create real change that will materially improve the lives of countless Americans of this generation and future generations. And we can bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. help end racial profiling, disparate treatment of Black Coloradans. It's now the law of Colorado. Perhaps the families would be wonderful. And I'm going to sign a large version here. And by the way, I want to thank everybody. It's really important in this public health crisis that we do these events in a safe way. And I know so many people wanted to have, hundreds or thousands of people get together, but we didn't want anybody to get sick because we're making a good law. And so we're doing it in as safe way as possible.